For cardiac arrest, both survivors and families of non-survivors are the silent, I was going to say silent majority, that's not the right term, but the silent masses, you know.
Why do you think that is?
I think partly because heart disease has been labelled as a lifestyle illness, and which is only in part correct. So, you know, the Life Be In It ads of the 80s and things, there's still a sense of if you have a heart attack, you deserve it, which is just absolutely outrageous, and especially in younger people. I can understand why we still have all of those preventive recommendations, but I think it's really counterproductive. The problem with that, so for example, the association between obesity and breast cancer is much stronger than the association between obesity and atherosclerotic disease. If you ask the general public, they would say completely the opposite. And so, no one thinks about breast cancer as a lifestyle disease, nor should they. But then people do leap at heart attacks, and so it's not a popular condition. It's not a, if you like, I know they say it's not a sexy condition to have. Of course, it's ridiculous to say that breast cancer or prostate cancer or mental illness are, but there's certainly not the same stigma attached to them in a way. I mean, it's amazing when you think what a revolution has taken place in terms of depression and mental illness, where there was a stigma. And now some of the highest profile people, you know, look at some of the cricketers who have just come out, and yet we're not there yet. You know, we're not there with cardiovascular disease. People don't come out and say, you know, I've got coronary disease, I shouldn't, and I'm proud. You know, I don't even know how that conversation had happened, but that's the sort of thing that needs to happen in some way, shape or form. Enough people sort of saying that this is a problem that isn't discussed for it to all of a sudden become part of the researchers, the politicians, the family table, you know, the discussion point.
Do you think it's because it's so scary and so sudden and so impactful?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically people who have suffered an arrest, but especially families where the person has not survived, it's the wrong setting for people to become advocates, because, you know, it's almost, again, related to that thing where it's not a discussed topic. People don't know how to talk to people about it. So a lot of people talk about this, you know, families talk about sort of suffering in silence, and there's that immediate period where everyone gets around and sort of, and then this, you know, a grief stage where people are left to endure in silence. And they really often, you know, when you think about people who become advocates, it takes a lot of courage because it's sort of reliving the grief. You know, everyone's sort of saying, you know, finding techniques to get over it. You know, people will tell you in this situation you never get over it, but there are ways in which it becomes less painful with time, and to be taking the bull by the horns and making that one of the most painful, if not the most painful thing in your life, front and centre, that takes a lot of courage. So I think when you think about medical conditions where there's been powerful advocates, it's often been the patient themselves living with a condition. So, you know, in cancer, it's obvious. You know, people who have cancer and are living with cancer, and people can relate and sympathise with that. Similarly with motor neuron disease and mental illness, whereas once people have died, it's very hard, bizarrely, it's very hard to advocate for people who have died and for the people who are left behind. And so I think you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, unexplained or sudden cardiac death, the sudden part of it becomes an issue in terms of bringing attention to it. Because one day you're walking along healthy, you're at work, and on the way home you're not. And there's no room for bringing attention to a cause when it's a click of the fingers.